All right, welcome into another episode of the News4JAGs podcast. Jamal St here alongside Justin Barney hopping on Zoom to knock one of these out. Justin, a bad day for you to not be feeling 100%.
Yeah, I know. I'm staying home from the office. I'm a little congested and stuff, not feeling the best. Man, you can't not talk about Trent Baalke getting canned from the Jaguars, a move that it's probably 2 weeks too late for a lot of people, and at least a couple head coaching candidates for Jacksonville too.
Man, this was the shakeup that folks wanted from the beginning, right? And it feels like the precursor to this whole thing was Liam Cohen tapping out on the search. With Liam Cohen moving on, he kind of said that he was going to stay in Tampa. It looked like the reports of him working out a new contract, and then from there, not long after, that's when Trent kind of gets the axe, right?
Yeah, just crazy timing of it. But you and I have talked about it. I think even Shad was asked about it when he last met with the media when he fired Doug Peterson. Hey, what happens if a candidate doesn't want to work with Trent? And he kind of left the door ajar, like, well, hey, Trent's job is not safe if if a candidate comes in, it gives me a better option in terms of ways to take this franchise forward. I'm
Yeah.
certainly going to listen to him. And Trent was not on good footing, but I think all of us kind of felt like Trent was still going to somehow survive a swing of the pendulum. And he did for a couple of weeks. And today, I think with Liam Cohen's news becoming official and Ben Johnson saying what he said during his Bears press conference, I think it really shined a light that Shad Khan had to do something or be kind of mitigate a disaster and hiring a guy like a Robert Saleh who would take the job and probably work with Trent Baalke, but you're not going to get one of those hot young coordinators. And I think Shad Khan missed his chance to get two of those guys.
I halfway feel bad because I was kind of ripping Shad Khan earlier after the whole Liam Cohen thing because this thing has been this coaching search has been a second disaster of a search. Actually, if you go back even farther than that, it's the third disaster of a coaching search in a row for him. And then all of a sudden, it's like he flips the coin and says, you know what, this is going bad, and rips the Band-Aid off. So while it is late, I
I would
guess we can
just
always
I
say
would
better
just
late
say
than
it
never.
came just about 20 minutes after your story was published. So I don't want to draw the lines, but the timing adds up. Sean, I think Shot is a follower of News4JAGs. I think he saw your 4 cents and decided to pull the trigger.
Hey, I'm glad that we could push him in the right direction. So now the team's got they got some big decisions that they got to make, and they're way behind the eight ball. So as we record this, Justin, there's still hope is what I'm going to go with. So they have two interviews recorded or scheduled, right? Patrick Graham and Robert Saleh. Neither one of which is going to, I don't think, inspire hope into the fan base. But Tampa Bay Buccaneers insider and beat writer Rick Stroud, who's the one who dropped the news about Liam Cohen's contract extension to stay in Tampa, also just tweeted at 4:38 as we record this. His understanding is that Cohen has not signed the contract yet, even though that could change at any moment. So there's still hope. It ain't over until it's over, Justin.
It's not. It's not. But is Liam Cohen the guy you want? I mean, you think Liam Cohen is the guy? He doesn't have a lot of experience. Yeah, he McVay coaching tree. Yes, Tampa Bay, and Baker Mayfield had a career year. Is he the guy you're ready to hit your wagon to, so to speak?
Well, you don't have a lot of other options. That's the problem. I mean, all right. So you let's say you didn't want Mike Vrabel, he's off the market anyway. Let's say they wanted Ben Johnson, he's off the market. They didn't even request a second interview with Aaron Glenn. Oh well, it didn't matter because he's off the market too. So you start looking around and you're saying, all right, where do you go? You've got the option of Liam Cohen, which is a Hail Mary at this point. You got the option of Joe Brady, who you're going to have to wait for, which I was told that his virtual interview went pretty well. But, are you willing to wait till you talk to him to figure out what you want? They haven't talked to Cliff Kingsbury, but there are reports that Kingsbury isn't planning on talking to anybody until the Commanders are done anyway. So do you go back to that well, or do you sit there and say, well, we're going to take Robert Graham or Robert Saleh or Patrick Graham?
That's They went that route last time with Doug Peterson. He was the safe hire, the first guy they spoke to in the cycle because he was unemployed at the time, was not
Yep.
coaching any team, and it took them until February 3rd to actually hire Doug Peterson. And there were reports that they liked Byron Leftwich, and Leftwich had issues with the GM arrangement in Jacksonville. I don't know how true that is. He had spoken to the New York Times, said he was never officially offered the job. But you have to wonder if the longer you wait now, you run the risk on, my guy's been Cliff Kingsbury. He's done great in Washington, has that head coaching experience, worked with guys, high profile guys, quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Johnny Manziel. But, again, do we even know if he wasn't in the initial 10 of Jacksonville? So he could be off the books until February 11th or 12th if Washington makes the Super Bowl. So,
well, they can talk to him in the gap week, but before the Super Bowl, so he'll basically be available almost on the same timeline as the teams that lose in the conference championship. So no, you wouldn't have to wait quite that long. Well, in theory, they wouldn't have to, but technically, if he's spurning any interest until they're done, yeah, you're right.
Well, so I mean, he was not one of the 10 initially.
Right.
So you're at this point, let's just say, I mean, Kellen Moore was one of the 10 initially, so you've already talked to him. So
do you go back for Mike McCarthy?
He hasn't been one of the 10. So I mean that.
Well, he came available a little bit later too, though.
Right. So I mean that's a safe option as well to me.
That's Doug Peterson.
Yeah, to me, McCarthy is a Doug Peterson type. And again, Peterson was the right guy for that time. I've said it before, but I do think they need, Peterson was that stabilizer, the transition person. I do think they need a person who takes this team and Trevor Lawrence, especially, a step forward. And I don't know if Mike McCarthy is that. I think you know what you get with him. So I do think that you need a guy that can move this franchise forward a few steps and not, I don't know if that's a Salah. I don't know if that's maybe it's a Kellen Moore. I don't know, but I like Cliff Kingsbury. But again, you're talking, for an in-person interview. Let's say they make the Super Bowl. You're talking February 12th, probably the soonest you could have him in town interviewing. Are you going to hire a guy just off a virtual interview? I don't know. Your front office situation now maybe precludes a little bit of that because you don't have a GM as well. So interesting. Kind of you're starting all over basically.
A little bit. Shad's talked about wanting that like coach centric model. So I don't think he's going to be opposed to hiring a coach and then figuring out the GM situation. I don't know how serious they are about maybe Ethan Waugh taking over. That's the exact way that Trent ended up in charge, was interim general manager. Let's just take the interim title. Just leave him there. It's fine. So we'll see. There could be a serious search here, or maybe the coach, a lot of these coaches do have GM candidates in mind of people that they'd like to work with. Do you give a guy that much, autonomy to say that he's going to basically fill two of the most important spots in your franchise, though? You got to be careful who you give that sort of decision-making to. Like, I think Liam Cohen would be a good hire, solid hire, especially at this point. If they could find a way to pull off that Hail Mary. But, like, do you feel comfortable with that young of a coach also making the decision on who your GM is? The answer is probably not. I know you're a Cliff Kingsbury guy, and at this point, I think Kingsbury should be in the conversation. Hasn't been as of yet, but if they're going to do this, they got to do this. But I ain't giving Cliff Kingsbury no sort of autonomy to pick no general manager. My problem with Cliff Kingsbury is he's just been mid as a head coach. Like, he was mid in college, he was mid in Arizona, but he knows offense, so that's why he keeps getting these opportunities. But I can't give him too much power, too much autonomy just because of that.
Yeah, it's tough. I would at least, and if Cliff is not the guy, I'd just rather Jacksonville kick the tires on him and see, hey, talk to him and do that. And, Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, all I'm saying, the Jets. So that
Joe Douglas had the exact same record as Trent Baalke.
That would be
as GM.
That would have been a Trent Baalke hire. That package. Trent's going to stay on as a VP of football ops, and you hire Joe Douglas and bring Saleh on there. But I think that's the candidate pool you were drawing from with Trent Baalke is the retreads or the guys like Patrick Graham. The Raiders are terrible. The Raiders. You're picking right behind the Jags. So
The last three staffs he's been on have been fired. I mean, I get it. People think of him as a defensive mind, and he does some good things, but his run defenses haven't been historically good. The last three coaching staffs that he's been on as a defensive coordinator, while the defense has been fine, their record is overall stunk. And as we've seen with Jaguars defenses past, when the team is bad, like the other team knows they're going to win. They're not trying to just go out there and necessarily decimate you. So sometimes, it's a lower. They beat you 24-3. They didn't think you were going to score. So why are they trying to go out there and hang 40? I mean, well, that's the human part of it, where the guys on the field know they don't need to.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the Liam Cohens, the Ben Johnsons, the Aaron Glenns. They don't want their first head coaching job to have been associated. You're almost handicapped in a sense with Trent Baalke. The holdover. He's on a 1-year contract. You're not going to pick your guy. And I do think that was an issue with Doug and Trent because that's not, I know they projected this uniformity and we're on the same page. Their collaboration was their big word. Right. And I don't know how authentic that was. I think Doug would have done better with his own GM. I mean, look how married to Press Taylor he was with his offense. I think he would have done better with his own GM. Doug's got a Super Bowl, though. Liam Cohen is just starting out. Ben Johnson is just starting out. I thought Ben Johnson's words in his press conference were very telling. He spoke very highly of Caleb Williams. Does Caleb have more upside than Trevor? I think he's on a rookie contract. When you look at that, Trevor's got a 4-year head start on him. He's making $275 million compared to Caleb's deal is what, $45 million. So Trevor, what you're going to get at this point, and he's going to be an average to above average quarterback. Caleb, he's had flashes. He's still more of a blueprint where you can still kind of program him and stuff. And he is a hell of a lot cheaper than Trevor Lawrence. And when you've got so many other issues on the Bears, so I do think that Trevor and Caleb are probably a wash in terms of talent wise, but I do think the issue that Ben Johnson saw in Jacksonville that he didn't see in Chicago was the structure in the front office, and you can't blame him. If he's going to go down, he wants to go down on his own accord, and not from a Trent Baalke.
Look, I mean, I get it. I definitely do. I mean, I was posted right before the Liam Cohen stuff dropped this morning that on the Amon-Ra St. Brown podcast, or the St. Brown Brothers podcast, Amon-Ra St. Brown said that Ben Johnson told him Sunday night that it was Jaguars, Raiders, Bears. Like, those were the three teams that were still buying for his services. So with those three, the Jaguars were in the running as of Sunday. And then Monday, the Bears were able to make a move. I mean, part of this, and to me, and I think this is the part where probably this got to be something against Trent Baalke. You're the general manager. You're helping running this search. They mismanaged the Rooney Rule to where they couldn't make a formal offer to Ben Johnson even if they wanted to. So as part of the Rooney Rule, you have to interview 2 minority candidates in person. Up until still now, the only minority candidate that they've interviewed in person is Robert Saleh. The Bears, on the other hand, when they look, and do you remember this, Justin? Were you watching that Lions game in the middle of like the fourth quarter? All of a sudden, there's this big breaking news alert that the Bears are going to interview Eddie George. So Eddie George found a way to flip the bird to the Jaguars one last time. So, I mean, not that he ran through them as a Titans player for his entire freaking career, but he found a way to as a retiree, knowing he ain't getting that job or even really being considered, goes in for an interview and enables the Bears to swoop in and take Ben Johnson right from under the Jaguars' noses before they could even make him an offer. And that sent ripples through this whole thing. Liam Cohen, they felt good about. He was scheduled to interview today as we record this. And he said, Well, and you know what, Justin, the last time we talked, I think people were asking like, did you think that Liam Cohen could be the guy to get Trent Baalke out? And I said, well, what leverage does he have? The Jaguars were the only team to request to interview him. And when you only got one interview, you don't have a ton of leverage, right? Well, man, if he didn't play his cards to a T, I don't know who his agent is, but his agent deserves a dang raise. If somehow Liam Cohen is the Jaguars head coach, this is a masterclass. We were talking about Baalke masterclass. This is a masterclass. That man said, I got something for you. Oh, yeah, look, new contract extension in Tampa. knowing that the Jags had no other options, and said, okay, I want to see what you going to do now. And all of a sudden, Shad said, we got to get rid of that guy. And so we'll see. I mean, as of right now, the ink ain't dry yet. So there's still a Hail Mary pass in there. But if they can't complete that, man, it's gonna get dark real quick.
I still think I still think Salah's in the mix. I do think that they have a shot with Joe Brady, who I would not be disappointed in. You raved about Joe Brady even 3 or 4 years ago. I would not be upset with Joe Brady. I think there was a couple reports, and I think you even heard too, that Brady had a great interview with Jacksonville. He would fit the narrative of what Trevor Lawrence is looking for. He coached Joe Burrow in college. Joe Burrow's record-setting season at LSU. Got a taste of the NFL. He's done great with Josh Allen. I would not be opposed to Joe Brady. But again, he's another guy that do you wait for? You could possibly be waiting until February 11th, 12th, 13th before you get him down for an in-person interview, depending on what happens this weekend. So time is the enemy. But I do think it's interesting, though, that Trent Baalke kind of came in here on to be the Dave Caldwell understudy, director of player personnel, and he was elevated after Caldwell was fired, and then Ethan Wall was kind of in as a Baalke hire when he brought him in, and now he's elevated into that interim role. So hopefully that Ethan Wall interim title stays an interim title.
Yeah, man. Look, I don't know. One way or another, like I think, and some of the stuff that I wrote even prior to this Trent Baalke thing, I still stand by. Like they're gonna try and make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what? But that, like, regardless, even with Trent gone, this has still been a completely mismanaged search. This process has not been smooth. It hasn't been run properly. Why did it take you this long to see what everybody else already knew? You made a mistake, flat out. And points to Shad for fixing it rather than sitting on it. But you should have known this. You should have already done the research. You should have been doing this work. This is the whole point of, like, people knew that have known that Trent was part of the problem. I mean, for years. I mean, by the time he got to Jacksonville, he already had the track record. And then the track record shows its head during the coaching searches again. But his survivability, I mean, down the stretch, look, Trent was going to do what Trent had to do to make sure that he was still here. But as Shad Khan, you cannot allow that to happen and to materialize. They needed the fresh start. They're going to get the fresh start. The problem is now they're starting this search from scratch, man. Other coaches are already starting to put together their staffs.
I saw Mark Brunell report from Christian Schultz, I believe. Jordan Schultz coming out from Brunell is heading up to the Aaron Glenn staff and with the Jets. So you've got guys who are already taking jobs elsewhere. Do you, and I know this has been a kind of a popular talking point for the last few years. Do you put a guy like Tony Boselli in that GM role or an EVP role? I know he's wanted that job. Is this the time where Shad goes to Tony and says, "Hey, we're gonna give you this, and we're gonna let you be the EVP, let you be the GM, build this roster." Tony has no experience, but he is a well-liked guy in Jacksonville. Does Tony get a shot? Is he in the mix?
Maybe. I mean, Tony has definitely he's been catching some criticism for some of the things and the support that he's been throwing out there behind Trent and some of the other issues that have been going on.
And you're going to get that because it's what guys who are employed or as an arm of the team, you're a commentator, you're a play-by-play guy, whatever. When you're drawing a paycheck or you work under the umbrella of a team, of course you're going to toe the company line. Yeah, I mean, sure. and that's what Tony has done, I think, to his detriment. And I do think a lot of people, him being so allegiant to Trent, especially this past week, was or is being seen as this guy is in Shad Khan's pocket. He's angling for a job. And hey, maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. Maybe Tony knows things besides us. But I know for a guy who's wanted that job for a while, he's not going to rock the boat.
No, and look, I think I've spoken on this before, where I think Tony would be a good EVP. I still think Shad Khan needs that EVP. I don't know if now is the time to add an EVP unless he already knows who that's going to be. Because on January 22nd, you don't have any time to waste. Go and look for an EVP. I mean, I don't see how you could spend even a week trying to go through a couple of candidates to say, okay, unless he's just already made up his mind that it's going to be whoever, Ozzie Newsome, Tony Vaselli, whatever. I mean, Rick Spielman. If it's not going to be one, I mean, unless he's already made up that mind and like, we're going to say, there it is, EVP. All right, now we got to, because you can't waste any more time. You have to immediately get on this thing. Every day you're losing ground on other coaching staffs because whoever your coach is has to put together a staff. And part of that is, well, all right, let's say Mark Brunell wanted to come back to Jacksonville to be a part of somebody's staff as an offensive coordinator if he could. Well, if he takes the job in New York with Aaron Glenn, that's not happening. Regardless of intention or if that's who your guy wanted to hire, it's not happening now. Defensive coordinator candidates are a tough, pill. So like if Robert Saleh isn't in the run, like if you want Robert Saleh to be a defensive coordinator, he's going to be getting calls. If you want Patrick Graham to be your defensive coordinator, he's going to get calls from somebody to work somewhere. So like those kinds of guys aren't just sitting around. I mean, there are openings around the league for some of these positions that they're interviewing for. So that means qualified candidates are taking jobs. If you wanted to pull somebody else from that line staff, their offensive line coach, Hank Farley, he's getting interviews for offensive coordinator jobs. I mean, so what are you going to do if you just sit here and wait? Now you're going to be sitting there looking like, all right, well, I missed out on all the really good candidates, and now you kind of got to go a little bit down a rung and pull from maybe position coaches that were already on their staffs. And while they could be good, but maybe they're not the best. And that's the one thing, if you land a Joe Brady, if you land a Liam Cohen, both of them first-time head coaches, younger coaches who honestly have not been long in the tooth in the NFL, they're not long tenured, you got to put together a veteran staff around them if they're going to survive. Everybody wants to be Sean McVay, right? Sean McVay, when he got hired, his defensive coordinator was Wade freaking Phillips. I don't know how old Wade was then, but Wade had been around football his whole life, had been a head coach. I mean, Wade had to be late 60s, early 70s when he was that defensive coordinator with Sean McVay, right? So that helps the tenure. You got somebody around, been there, done that, can help, right? And a lot of these other coaches haven't put that same sort of veteran presence around them. Like we saw Doug Peterson come in, and Doug's puts first-time coordinators around him. And that's okay because Doug had been a head coach before, but you've got to put together a good staff if you're going to survive. If somebody wants Dennis Allen, he's probably going to get a job somewhere. I've been critical of the guy before, but he's a good defensive coordinator. If you want, again, Robert Saleh, he's going to get a job. So you better get that guy. Yeah, that's the thing is you got to put together a staff. And the longer you wait, the harder that job becomes. And these coaches are coming in and interviewing with a list of names like, oh, yeah, this guy would love to work with me. Well, hell, he wanted to work with me a month ago, and now he's got a job.
It's like the Bucs GM just got a job with the Raiders.
Right.
So it's, a lot of moving parts. And I do feel like Jacksonville they should have done the hard reset right after the season ended. Shad should have swept Trent out with Doug and started anew. And I do think, Trent was handling a lot of this coaching search too. So I do think they are a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of you've already seen 3 guys you've interviewed for that job take jobs or be rumored to going back to their previous job. So you're behind the eight ball calendar wise, unless you have your eyes set on a candidate, Spagnuolo, or a guy like Todd Monken who just came out. A guy like Joe Brady. I mean, unless you're looking at a guy like that, Kellen Mond, then you're really behind the eight ball at this point.
I'll take a pass on Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore is in my same vein with, Patrick Graham. I mean, he's been fired from the Cowboys, fired from the Chargers, hanging out in Philly now. I'm good. I'll pass there. I don't know. Justin, this has been a mismanaged search. It's bad, man. It is bad. They got a lot of work to do.
Did you expect anything less? Come on.
I guess I shouldn't have. But I mean, at some point, I guess, it makes you miss Doug Peterson, don't it?
At least Doug, you knew what you were going to get. He bristled at times. He was an easy guy to deal with, but yeah, I do think him and Trent should have been helping each other pack up their stuff in the stadium together instead of 2 weeks later Trent gets the.
1995, Justin. That's the cost. 1995. That's how much a U-Haul costs.
Maybe next week, maybe by the end of this week, we'll have another pod and talking about the guy who took the job. But February 3rd was the last time they waited, so I'm not expecting, especially Liam Cohen news, expecting them to make that hire this week.
Look, I don't think it's going to be a long wait, Justin. I think that they understand the urgency of this. I think that this move around Shad Khan was reactionary. And I think that they're going to make a move. Now, the question is that move going to be Robert Saleh? I think but I don't know if they're going to wait long enough to get to Joe Brady. The only way they wait is if, like Liam Cohen says, no, I'm serious about staying in Tampa. I could 100% see us sitting here with what was that, Josh McDaniel situation where he backed out of the Colts head coaching job, right? I could see that for Liam, like right now, where, oh, he's going back to Tampa. Shad's like, no, he ain't. And he pulls the 180 and ends up coming to Jacksonville. I could see that in the next couple of days. That's actually, I mean, that again, Hail Mary at this point. Like this is a small miracle to pull it for them to pull it off. But I think that's the overall goal, is that they figured that out. And he basically said no, and they said, whoa, we got to do something. We can't not get this guy.
Possible. If he's the guy you want to blow up your franchise for, with that power, a 39-year-old getting that say.
But is it really blowing up your franchise? I mean, so here's the thing. Like, so here's the thing, and I know we talked about it a minute ago. Like, I don't necessarily want Liam to pick out the GM. Like, I think Shad still needs to pick that, and maybe even put in the EVP later. But is it blowing up your franchise rather than saying, well, we're just not going to waste another season or another 2 or 3 seasons? Like, if overall Trent's sitting here pushing, saying, man, Shad, go hire Patrick Graham because he's thinking I'm going to be able to pull the strings on this guy, or go hire Robert Saleh because Trent's feeling like he's going to be able to pull the strings in that picture. And instead of saying, all right, well, we'll let Trent work out his contract, which wastes a year. And then you're with a coach that you really never wanted, that really doesn't help Trevor, which wastes probably 2 more years on top of that. You say, you know what? Let's just do it now. I mean, I don't know that that's letting Liam Cohen run your franchise as much as it is saying, look, rather than wasting time, let's at least see if we can fix this thing now. For as much as, like, I'll give Shad some grief here or there, and I know he catches a lot of grief from fans, the one thing the dude does want, and I fully believe this, is he wants to win. I'll talk about a lot of this stuff, but Shad wants to win football games, and he's always put his money where his mouth is to make that kind of thing happen. It hasn't turned into wins as much, but I don't think, like, it's not like some other ownership where they say the right things and then then the question is, are they going to pony up the dollars? At every turn, Shad has shown up with wallet in hand and said, what do I got to do to get this thing right? And he's handing out money to do it. He's just handed the money to the wrong people. So I don't know if maybe Liam Cohen was just that impressive.
You can't undersell how important any NFL hire is, but especially this one. We said it the other day. Trevor Lawrence going into year 5. He's played under Urban Meyer, Darrell Bevell. He's played under Doug Peterson and Press Taylor, and now he's playing up for another head coach and offensive coordinator into year 5. It's make or break for Trevor. You're married to him for the next 5 years. He is a vastly overpaid quarterback right now for what you've gotten for his body of work. You need to have a coach that comes in, believes in him, invests in him, and makes him that quarterback that we saw during those 18 games between 2022 and 23. That's what Trevor Lawrence is capable of. And Doug Peterson, Press Taylor, and to me, an extension, Trent Baalke did not set this team up for the best success. And just seen it far too many times with this franchise. You got to nail it. You got to nail it, Shad.
All right. So before we wrap this thing up, all right, Justin, I know you're a Cliff Kingsbury guy, but you said it. They got to find the guy who can get the most out of Trevor. We'll wrap it up with this. Who is the guy that gives you the most confidence in being able to do that? Is it a Liam Cohen for what he was able to do with Baker Mayfield, just one season of that, but maybe Will Levis in college? Is it Joe Brady? I mean, his work has come with Josh Allen and Joe Burrow when he's been impressive. Or is it Cliff Kingsbury for what he's done with Kyler Murray and now Jalen Daniels?
Those are my three. And I would probably lean towards Kingsbury first. I don't think that's realistic, though. I didn't think Ben Johnson was realistic. I think, to me, my three now and still remain. I think Joe Brady, Liam Cohen, and I mean Kingsbury's my first, but I don't think he's a realistic play at this point. So I would say those three named. I would go. I mean, I would probably go Brady, Cohen, and Cliff.
I'm with you to an extent. I think Cohen at this point is your best case scenario if you can pull off that Hail Mary. I think I like what he's done with Baker. I like their offense, the creativity. And I think he fits the mold to get the guy before he's the guy. I mean, so would Joe Brady if they went that direction. If they landed Cohen or Brady, I won't completely hate it.
I'm with you. I don't think either of those two guys would be a bad hire. And that's why I didn't think Ben Johnson was realistic. I don't think Cliff Kingsbury is realistic. I think Asala is realistic. He's got head coaching experience. Shad last time hired Doug Peterson, kind of a retread in that mold. So I do think, if you look at him, I mean, I think he comes in and he's another like a Doug Peterson. He's a stabilizer kind of guy, but I think that would be the absolute safe hire instead of like a Patrick Graham. But I do think you miss out. I think you cap yourself ceiling wise on what you get from Asala. I think you get another Doug Peterson type just with a specialty towards defense.
Well, we'll see what happens. Look, I mean, hey, we didn't talk about Mike McCarthy, Justin. I mean, we maybe briefly touched on it, but I mean, he's out there. They could fly him in right now. He's looking for a job. So that would also be a stabilizer. And maybe that's something that interests Shad too, what the floor is. I don't know. This has been a wonky process. And we'll try and keep up to date with everything. We'll try and drop another one of these podcasts. Who knows? Maybe the next one is with the coaching hire. And fingers crossed. We'll see what happens, and we'll catch you on the next episode of News4JAGs podcast. See you.